Los Angeles, a sprawling urban metropolis, home to nearly 5 million people, known throughout the world as a place where dreams and fantasies are created and given life on the silver screen. But far from the fantasy of Hollywood lies the reality of life, as the struggle is waged against environmental and social injustice. Huntington Park, a small community located in southeast Los Angeles, is one of many communities suffering from the effects of a nearby toxic industry. It is here on Cottage Street where a concrete recycling facility has been invited by the Huntington Park government, with little concern for the health of the residents. Concrete dust laden with toxics drift over the wall, settling in and around the homes nearby.
Well, I've lived here a long, long time, about 40 years and some from childhood. I believe this pile came here approximately 9 months ago. I think it's detrimental to the area that we are living here. Naturally, the property has gone down in value, and it's a health hazard for everybody living in the neighborhood. Complete health hazard. With disregard to the people that are living here, they are operating constantly and with no regards to the dust or anything like that. All of a sudden, everybody started feeling sick because of the dust.
I was in the hospital for 1 month because of my lungs. Then they gave me a machine so that I could come home. The dust affects me a lot, and when I can't get oxygen to my lungs, I use the machine to breathe. Because of this, I can't go outside very often. I'm stuck in here. All the children are affected by this dust. One girl has asthma. The doctor has told us that one of the boys has a growth in his brain. We've had to take him to the doctor 3 times already this month, and another one of the girls has the same problem. All the kids around here are affected.
Que en las noches a veces trabajan mucho y hacen mucho ruido y no nos deja dormir mucho.
At night sometimes they work a lot and they make a lot of noise, and they don't stop. When we're doing our homework and they make noise, we can't concentrate on our homework.
Health researchers have found that the symptoms these residents experience are associated with PM10, a deadly air pollutant which is linked to chronic respiratory disease and premature death due to heart attacks and asthma.
I think that the levels of asthma in Southern California are very high, the incidence of asthma. I think that asthma is related to air pollution effects. I think that it has powerful symptoms, shortness of breath, inability to exhale. It causes an obstructive effect so that you really can't, you feel as though you can't breathe out. So it's a very strong effect, and I think very frightening for children.
No, nosotros hablamos y nos dicen sí, sí, lo vamos a hacer y no hasta la vez.
They keep saying, yes, yes, we're going to help you. But on the contrary, they bring more and more material. We went to city council meeting, but the council members didn't listen to us. In fact, they completely ignored us. It was a form of discrimination against us because we are a poor Latino community.
We are totally enclosed in our own property. We are prisoners in our own home. We cannot live like this.
The issues surfacing on Cottage Street are not unique for communities of color. In 1991, a study of the Los Angeles basin found that 71% of African Americans and 50% of Latinos were living in areas with the most polluted air.
If you look at the national trend, you'll find that landfills, hazardous waste landfills, incinerators are disproportionately located in low-income communities of color nationwide. That's disproportionate impact. There are 3 off-site commercial hazardous waste landfills in California. All three of them are located in predominantly Latino communities. There are other studies that have dealt with national trends. For example, the 1987 United Church of Christ study, Toxic Waste and Race, did the study, United Church of Christ did the study to look at where facilities are placed. And again, low-income communities and communities of color are disproportionately affected. There is, just this year, for example, the Center for Policy and Alternatives did a follow-up study to that 1987 study, and found that basically from 87 to 1994, where waste facilities are located have actually gotten worse when it comes to communities of color. So the trends have actually worsened. If you look at this whole pattern, you can come up with this matrix of vulnerability: income, education, class, race, ethnicity, and geography. These things go into making up this vulnerability.
In 1993, throughout the United States, people of color were 47% more likely to live near a commercial hazardous waste facility. The unequal burden of pollution in communities of color and low-income communities is well documented. This has sparked interest in university study and community organizations alike.
I think Los Angeles is probably the most outstanding example in the United States of mixing, such a huge volume of hazardous substances with so many densely inhabited, residential, areas. But it's a problem that's all but invisible, except to the people who actually live in these areas.
Sometimes the dangers we encounter are very obvious, particularly when they invade our backyard. But some toxic dangers are unseen.
The number one environmental health threat to children right now is a preventable disease, lead poisoning. It's preventable. We can do something about it, but the problem is not that we don't have the science, the problem is who's going to pay for it. And the other problem is which children are being poisoned, and they're basically low-income children and children of color.
Nationwide, 1 in every 12 children have abnormally high levels of lead in their blood. Tiny amounts of lead-based paint found in older homes can cause health, learning, and behavioral problems that are irreversible.
Lead poisoning is a big problem in LA, predominantly in low-income communities, communities of color. And but the first step that needs to be done in our community is to get more information out about sources and hazards and to get more parents involved. We need more kids screened.
And he can't learn in school. He can't stay in school long enough to learn in his case. What I've experienced with my kid and the other children I have seen in the classroom or just around period is that these children need special care, looking after. I no longer can go to work from 8 to 5, for sure. I can't. Every now and then when I get a good break, I'll try to go back to work, but I can't really work. I cannot really work because you can't work on a job where you can only be there once a week or whatever. That's, people's work have to go on.
Lead is particularly important because it is so widespread, and secondly because it affects children in profound ways, and there is no threshold, there is no safe level. And so that what you have are extreme consequences of neurobehavioral and neurologic deficits associated with lead exposure at levels that are infinitesimal.
Not only are we not dealing with problems, the environmental pollution problems we have in the city, but we're exporting our problem to other communities, particularly Native American communities.
In an effort to discard its waste, Los Angeles has reached beyond its boundaries for a quick way out rather than a long-term solution. At the Torres Martinez Indian Reservation, raw sewage has been dumped illegally in the heart of a Native American community.
The dump is supposed to be about 500,000 tons. It's 5 stories high, and the length of it is about 2 football fields. The sludge comes from San Diego and Los Angeles. People just couldn't stand to be around it very much because people got headaches, and they had symptoms like they had cold, and different kinds of water. Their eyes got watery. You know, it was hard. It affected them, but when we used to go to our Indian clinic here, they used to say that it was a common cold or that we were allergic to something. And that's as far as it got. So we really didn't have anything recorded on it until after the people started complaining more. And then other mobile clinics used to come out here to get these records. They say there's heavy metals like lead, arsenic, chromium, and total chloroform.
For a number of years, everybody has known that arsenic causes skin cancer, and people have known that arsenic causes lung cancer. Arsenic, if ingested, produces cancers of the bladder, the kidney, the liver, and the skin and lung. So if you have arsenic in your drinking water, if you have arsenic in your skin, if you have arsenic inhaled, then you have a problem of systemic cancers. There is no safe level for arsenic, there's no safe level for lead. And chromium is an extremely powerful lung carcinogen.
I believe it's a political move because what they want to do is to have these facilities on the reservation because there's no regulations. Of course, there's a lot of money involved in it, and the obstacles of the big corporations backing these go to certain individuals, and you know, money talks. So I think the bottom line is to do with a lot of money.
The illegal dumping of sewage sludge on the lands of the Cahuilla Indians continued despite their protest. The governments of Los Angeles and San Diego counties have turned a blind eye as long as things are being disposed of cheaply, not taking into account the lives of the people. Worldwide, it is the poor communities of color that are targeted. Faye Coons is looking at this problem on a global scale.
A lot of the Americans do not know that the plastics that they recycle are actually not processed here in the United States. In 1993, about over 1 million pounds of plastics were dumped in the Philippines from Los Angeles and Long Beach port areas. What's happening is the waste that we create here, we don't really process here. There's a trade that goes on between the governments in third world countries and brokers, waste brokers here in the United States.
The United States is shipping some of the most difficult to recycle materials to other countries, countries with little regulation on toxic materials, endangering the lives of the many people living and working nearby.
What's even worse are the lead batteries. The facilities in Asia, especially in Manila, are not that sophisticated. So a lot of the workers would tear the batteries apart with their bare hands, and this is very toxic and hazardous to their health.
This global trade is similar to the pattern of dumping on poor communities within the United States. The world's wealthiest countries are home to only 15% of the population, yet emit almost 70% of the world's industrial waste, maintaining the standards of one way of life while sacrificing the lives of others.
So we're talking about this whole movement to address this whole question of waste going from rich countries to poor countries, from rich communities to poor communities. And those things have to be addressed.
As we continue to create more waste than we can manage, some profit while others pay. Most corporations are not held accountable for the costs they impose on nearby residents. The Air Quality Management District, known as the AQMD, is a regulating body between the people and the corporations. Juana Gutierrez is co-founder and president of Mothers of East Los Angeles de Santa Isabel. She and her husband Ricardo have been active in the fight for environmental and social justice since 1985.
Try to have confidence with AQMD and EPA, but EPA right now responds a lot, not in the past. But AQMD don't care the community. AQMD specific do by the business people or business corporation like in Vernon. We have a lot of problems in Vernon. when you talk to somebody in AQMD, we have this problem. This problem affects the community in different ways. AQMD say, okay, we're gonna do this and this, never do nothing.
We have been involved in the environmental thing for a long time. We have fought against the EPA and against AQMD. The problem with AQMD and EPA is because there's so many bureaucrats there that they have to do the bidding of the elected officials that have put them there, and the elected officials have to do the bidding of the persons that pay for them to be reelected, which is business. So consequently, although they claim that they cater to the public, they do not. Everything is done in the runaround way, pro-business.
The power that the corporate world holds seems to dictate whose voices are heard and who is kept uninformed, silent, and powerless. Although government policy is supposed to regulate business, it often seems that business is regulating policy. The result is a dense barrier between people in communities and policymakers. Established in 1977, the AQMD's main task is to clean the Los Angeles air basin, where it is estimated that at least 20,000 people will contract cancer in a 70-year period from exposure to hazardous chemicals.
Since basically we regulate businesses, about 30,000 businesses in Southern California, most of the time we deal with business people. But of course our aim is to clean the air for everyone who lives here. And so we welcome participation. One of the best ways the members of the public can become involved in AQMD activities would be to come to our monthly board meetings, which are on the second Friday of each month. And this is where our governing board, which is composed of 12 members, sits down and basically makes policy for what the agency will do.
Across industry, but you never talk about the
Activists and community members alike feel that the AQMD board members are not responsive to their concerns.
We're not very handy to downtown Los Angeles if someone wants to walk over on lunch break, unfortunately.
Despite its inconvenient location, 25 miles east of downtown Los Angeles, the AQMD headquarters often manages to draw community members intent on being heard. For over 9 months, this mountain has loomed over the residents of Cottage Street while political powers remain deadlocked, avoiding a resolution.
They haven't done anything to protect my house. Nothing. We've been to the city council, we've been to the planning, they ignored us. They told us that they were going to go into this, have further studies on it. From what I understand, I don't think they have done anything. And the city council, knowing that this is going on, has made absolutely no provisions for us.
Despite growing concern over the welfare of this community, neither the owner of the recycling facility, the Huntington Park city planners, or the California EPA were available for an interview.
LA is the only metropolis in the country that has a number of what we sometimes call phantom cities. And these are industrial areas that are separately incorporated. They don't have residents. Their whole function is to give industrial landowners and industrialists total control over tax base, total control over land use. And perhaps the most extraordinary example of that, just a mile or two southeast of downtown Los Angeles, is the remarkable city of Vernon, a city whose slogan is exclusively industry. It has about 130 inhabitants, all of them, or 90% of them, city employees living in city-owned housing who vote 100% for the current regime.
Vernon, with its founders, which have intermarried and it belongs to them now, none of them live in Vernon. However, they have an address there in Vernon. They have a cot right there in City Hall so that they can be reelected. Because if it was not for that, they could not run for mayor or for the council.
Well, why is Vernon an example of the lack of power in blue-collar areas? Because Vernon is totally surrounded by blue-collar residential cities who have no control over land use or toxics or fire safety inside of Vernon. Vernon has a staggering 275 major toxic sites. And these range from toxic storage areas to a number of companies that use toxics as inputs. And Vernon has a long history of fatal industrial accidents, of releases of dangerous chemicals. But because it's incorporated, the residential communities around it have no say whatsoever.
Although there are many obstacles, some people have been able to mobilize. Concerned Citizens of South Central Los Angeles is a group that has been active in fighting for environmental and social justice since 1985. Concerned Citizens scored a victory that same year when they stopped a proposed incinerator, despite substantial opposition from local government and the company which would operate the incinerator. Charlotte Bullock and Robin Cannon are the co-founders of Concerned Citizens of South Central Los Angeles.
Well, Concerned Citizens of South Central Los Angeles was formed in order to fight an incinerator which was planned for our residential community. The incinerator would have caused a major impact to the neighborhood, meaning that we would have had trash trucks coming through our neighborhood day and night. The plant was going to operate 24 hours a day. We were afraid that the plume or the smoke coming from the incinerator, especially near to the incinerator, would cause a lot of health problems in the neighborhood. And with a park only 1 block away and a high school 2 blocks away, we were very concerned about the health of our children. And so it made it easy for us to organize people.
One thing about other people, I'll call them the outside people, they think that we do not read. They think that put in the book and they won't find out. But Robin is a natural born reader. So they gave her environmental impact a report that was about 3.5 inches thick. And so Robin read in one day the environmental impact report. And she was really concerned then.
And so we just told one more person, one more person, one more person, and they were all concerned about the same issues. They were also concerned about the political process, how this neighborhood was chosen to get this incinerator. And people felt that politicians, the city government, felt that, we didn't have the political wherewithal to fight them or the knowledge. And we proved that to be very untrue.
And so we're finding more and more communities basically organizing themselves, educating themselves, and taking the issues on, whether it's City Hall or whether it's the county or whether it's some chemical company or industry, and saying no to poisoning, and that it's a life and death struggle, and these communities are choosing life. There are different groups that are springing up, networks. The Southwest Network for Environmental Economic Justice based in Albuquerque, for example, has begun to challenge these disparate siting patterns. And again, we're seeing this happening in the southern United States, in the Northwest, and in the Northeast. So it's a matter of, right now, communities are organizing themselves and saying, not just in our backyard, but also not in anyone's backyard, that communities are saying, we need to do something about this waste. We need to prevent pollution before it occurs. There's a direct correlation between how much waste one produces and per capita income. So if we're talking about waste reduction and elimination and basically creating the need for fewer and fewer landfills and incinerators, that means we all going to have to do something.
Fed up, some of the Cahuilla Indians formed a human blockade to stop the flow of trucks onto their land.
What really made us decide to erect that blockade had to do with one of our final meetings with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. When we last went to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, when we told them about some of the grievances we had here and how it was affecting us and that we wanted those people to stop dumping sludge on our reservation, they said that there wasn't anything they could do on our reservation. So with that, we stood and we put the blockade up. And this is when we first started getting recognition.
After 21 days of the blockade, the Cahuilla Indians were finally granted a temporary injunction.
Because the LA County Health Department isn't getting the education out to the communities have had to take on that role to educate and to get more children screened.
It is at lead fairs like these, sponsored by concerned citizens, that community members can take their children to be tested for environmental hazards within the home. A small victory in the fight for a safe environment and a healthy future.
The people have gotten together. We've had rallies, we have demonstrations, we have had meetings. We've taken it to the City Hall, our demonstration, and then we go to the meetings from there on. And they listen to us. It's on the table. It's on the table now. We keep at it. We will not at all let the City Council get away with what they're getting away with. And it's important for us as a community here. Hispanic people have united, and we're going to fight.
As meetings and protests continue and community members struggle to negotiate with government and big business in their hope for a just and healthy life, some businesses are willing to plea bargain with the people, labeling their health with the price tag.
They said to us that if you accept this incinerator, we'll give you a community betterment fund. We'll give you $10 million. And you can build something for the park or build a child care center. And we said, you know, our health means more to us than that. Sure, we have some economic problems, but we also have some environmental problems and lots of health concerns. So we don't consider there to be any tension between working on those issues, because we know as we work on our environmental issues and on our economic issues that we're working to solve each and every one of those problems because they're interlinked.
We need jobs, we want to work, but we don't want to have to trade our health for this low-paying job. And what we've discovered is that in many cases, incinerators, for example, are not labor-intensive industries. The state-of-the-art incinerators only hire a few people, and usually those people have high skills and have technical training beyond what's in the community. And so what people are saying is that we want to bring industries, clean industries to our communities, safe jobs. We don't want to have our workers poisoned.
Agenda was founded in 1993 by Anthony Thigpen, an activist and visionary.
And in fact, in many instances, the technology exists today to produce most of what society needs without the kinds of poisoning that occurs right now. But the issue is a question of money and profits and the inability to do that. So my vision is a society that produces toxic-free. The other component of that, and I think the way that happens, is there needs to be some kind of control exercised by local people, grassroots people in a democratic way. So some kind of democratic control of production is the other element of that. So toxic-free production, democratic control of production are the two key elements for me in my vision of society.
Our society must recognize the need to promote industries for our communities that not only provide livable wages for local residents, but also provide a safe and healthy environment for residents and workers.
In order to have sustainable communities, we must have just environmental justice. In order to have sustainable economies, we must have economic justice at home as well as abroad. And I think what we're seeing is that this environmental justice movement that started here has now, become a global movement. So it is no longer just a NIMBY or not in my backyard kind of an issue. It's an issue of we have to make sure that we have a just and sustainable policy that drives our environmental policy and our economic development policy. And that's what we see the vision of this larger movement.
We have different victories here in this area, in this community in East LA. But there's not a Madres victory. There's the community victory, because we work together against all the injustice came to this area.
Throughout Los Angeles, community-based groups are fighting for environmental and economic justice, challenging the traditional limits of community participation by forcing those in power to address their needs and concerns. Together, people taking a stand have proven that they can successfully challenge powerful corporations and government policymakers to secure a healthy and sustainable home for themselves and others. It is in this light that we can find hope for changing the patterns of unequal exposure in our world. Together, it is the power of people who will create this change.